on the screen. All right, good afternoon. My name is John Seder. I've been with VMS Software for about 4.5 years, and I've been in OpenVMS for
Make it easy so you don't talk so loud.
much longer.
Closer to the front.
Actually, I was on the other side of this equation not too many years ago. I was a sole VMS admin with 14 or 16 systems, and there was one Unix Linux admin that had like 10 or 12 systems, and we needed to cross-train each other. So I had a set of questions like, how do I do this? How's this work? So kind of transposing that to the other side. Hopefully, this will answered a lot of the same questions that a Linux admin would have. So over the past several years, there's been a decrease in a shortage of VMS admins and even programmers. Companies like VSI and SEI, who did a presentation on this topic this morning, have responded by offering managed services programs to fill the gaps for OpenVMS admins. But that onboarding process can sometimes take weeks or months. In most cases, your IT is going to need coverage more immediately. And since OpenVMS has more in common with Linux than it does Windows in most cases, training a Linux administrator in the ways of the OpenVMS force is a more logical step. So this session is designed for that Linux admin who gets the call or the email that says their OpenVMS system admin is not coming into work anymore for whatever reason, and you need to take over the reins. So today we're going to assume that you have never been on an OpenVMS system, or maybe just as a user, and we're going to start with the very basics and build on that. Since there is so much to learn on any particular topic, and it's easy to fall into a rabbit hole, I'm going to just skim over some things. So when I was preparing the format for this presentation, I framed it this way, as far as like a scope. And I just imagined a friend telling me, "It's not working. I just inherited an OpenVMS environment. I need to know everything in an hour and 40 minutes, or 110 minutes. That's basically what this is. So we're going to move on from that. So keeping that in mind, we're going to cover a lot of material, but not in a lot of depth. Along the way, we'll drop breadcrumbs about how to dig deeper or get more info on a topic or even a command. In most cases, I'll simply mention the equivalent Linux command and show you how to get the same information from OpenVMS. We don't really have time to get into scripts and things like that. This is mostly command line stuff. So here's the plan. We're going to talk about access, how to get into the system, how authorization works, and a little bit about privileges. Then we'll talk about the CLI, the command language interpreter, which is DCL, how to use help, and then we'll talk about some of the commands. Then we'll talk about navigation, how to navigate through a directory and file, how the file system works, the versioning, and how to use the editor. Then we'll talk about system monitoring and security. Then we'll move on to non-interactive topics like queues, batch queues, print queues, and then backups. And we'll talk a little bit about clusters, not too much. There's actually another presentation by Keith Paris on introduction to clusters. I believe it's tomorrow. He'll have more in-depth information on that, but at least I'll have an introduction on this today. All right, so let's get started by getting connected to the system. VMS, you'll frequently hear me refer to an OpenVMS server as a node. You can still call it a server or a host, but if you want to sound like you know what you're doing, we'll call it a node. Or I'll use them interchangeably sometimes. There's several ways to connect to an OpenVMS system, but for interactive access, there's SSH, Telnet, DECnet, which is a proprietary protocol, and FTP, SFTP. So FTP and SFTP, they're pretty much the same as in Linux, so we won't really cover those. DECnet is a proprietary OpenVMS network protocol that predates TCP/IP. It's mostly used now for node-to-node tasks and maybe internal transfer files if it's used at all. We're going to skip that today. Telnet is also fairly ubiquitous and behaves the same here as it does in Linux. Because security considerations or insecurity, many organizations don't allow its use anymore. So by process of elimination, we're going to use SSH for this connection. All right, so fire up your terminator. In this case, we're going to use PuTTY and fill in the basics like the IP address and the protocol and the The port number usually takes care of itself. If you're using other terminal emulators, probably already comfortable with whatever the interface is on that. So here you have your login prompt. Let's assume you have the credentials for an account called System or maybe something similar. For our purposes, we're looking for a fully approved account, and we're going to use mine. Here's one of the first differences in OpenVMS. In the majority of cases, usernames and passwords are not case sensitive. It's possible to make them case sensitive, but the default behavior is for VMS to convert any case to uppercase. This doesn't apply it to VMS command line. So, and looky here, we hit the jackpot. All right, well, maybe not. That's a DCL prompt, a digital command language, or a CLI. It's akin to the bash prompt for your whatever shell prompt you're using. The default prompt is a $, but most admins will change that to something more informative, like a node name or the node name and the username, like I have here, or my initials. If you have multiple systems and you're logged into all of them and they all have the default prompt, it gets difficult to know which node you're on immediately. So this helps with that. I also changed my prompt color, but that's just some escape sequences. We won't cover that today, but I should have some content like this on our Git site by the time this gets published. So we're logged in. Now what? Well, actually, before we continue, let's take a minute to list some resources from local to global. If you're at the command prompt, you can always use help. You just type help and then the topic. We're going to go into that in more detail. Then you can hit our VSI documentation library at the VMS software site. You can use the VSI knowledge base, but you have to have credentials for that.
What is the official name of the Bravo equivalent that you use command like boot DKA04 in that name like pin or something? You know what I'm talking about? Like when you turn on a VM via.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that. Okay. The Itanium or Integrity uses UEFI as its it doesn't use Grub or anything like that. I think I don't know how he wrote this, but there's a VSI OpenVMS forum, which is a lot of the x86 people use that, and it's a good place to ask questions and get them answered. Next step up for that is if you have a VMS support contract, you can contact VSI support at vmssoftware.com. They'll assign you a ticket and then assign you a resource to work on it. We also have a wide range of training courses from operations and security to system administration all the way up to internals. That's available. You can see those at that website there. And then after that, if your organization is interested in getting external resources, there's VSI professional services, which we do. Things like we can do upgrades or migrations and things like that, just single one-off kind of projects. Or there's the managed services, which is kind of a virtual admin. And for those things, we contact sales at VMS software. So, so if you get stuck in the command line and you can't remember the qualifier you need, you can just type in help and you'll see all the topics and commands that you can run. This is the OpenVMS version of man pages, but it's a little more intuitive. So that's and you can pick any of these topics. If you do know what command you need to help with, you can just type it in and it'll give you a page of information and options like this. Like in this case, I wanted to see more information on type. You can drill down on the qualifier you need, or you can help. You can type examples, and it'll give you some examples. If you're not quite sure what command you need help with, use help hints, and you'll be presented with a list of categories. In this example, I chose files and directories. I just typed in file, and it's going to give me a list of all the things I can do with files: converting, creating, editing, searching. So it's kind of it helps narrow down what you're looking for. From here, you just hit enter one time to get out of the subtopic, and then type in the command that you need help with, and you're on your way. Oh yeah, we got on tangent. All right, so let's start off with some commands and substitutions so things will flow more smoothly once we start covering the other topics. While it's fine to do the Linux to OpenVMS translation in a lot of cases that you can create symbols for these to use Linux, and say CD will be, a set default command or whatever. We'll get a little bit into that. It's going to be easier just to get used to using the native OpenVMS commands. So while we're fresh with this login, let's take a look and see how that worked behind the scenes. So when OpenVMS uses a few files for authorization, but the main one is called sysuaf.dat, which stands for System User Authorization File.dat. It takes the place of etc password, etc shadow, and etc no login. sysuaf, or just UAF, is accessed through an executable called authorize. Once in authorize, you can add, change, or delete security, cribs, and quotas for any of the users. So here's we're going to look at the system account in a minute. So MCR, real quick, is a shortcut that goes back. It's quicker than typing in run sys$system. MCR means just run it from sys$system, and we'll talk about that area in a few minutes also. It's hard to get this in a perfect order where you're not crossing information. All right, so this is the system account. Excuse me. And it's basically, this is a UAF record. And this is UAF, and it's basically broken into 4 sections. The first one, and we'll break those down. So the first one is the identification part. It contains a username and account owner. It's usually some regular name. And where the home area is, that's under the default. Their login command, and the highlighted part, which is the UIC. We're going to talk about that in a minute too. So in the default UICs for the system account is always going to be 1,4, and anybody that you can put in whoever you want in that system account, and they will use the group privileges that go with that. Again, I'll get into that in a minute. But we see, like, under the file owner, normally in Unix and Linux you have UID and GID. In VMS you'll have group, member of the owner. So in this case you'll have group 1 and member 4. In most cases, VMS doesn't really drill down to the member. You can if you're creating ACLs, which is beyond the scope of today, but in general, it'll go down to group access. The next section up is it deals with access and restrictions. So you can specify your primary days and your secondary days. If you don't want users on the system between 5 p.m. and 9 in the morning, you can restrict that. You can say you only work these days. It's very flexible what you can do. Access restrictions also covers the type of access, including dial-up, interactive network, batch, things like that. In the next section is when your account expires, your password minimum, the number of login fails since the last successful, your password lifetime when it changes, password change, last time it was changed, your last login. This is interactive. This is getting to the command line, and this is a non-interactive. This is things like FTP or batch jobs or things like that. So earlier we talked about the password being not case sensitive, and you can make it case sensitive. And the way you do that is just to specify once you're in the authorized prompt, you'll see this authorized utility. You'll see the UAF prompt. And you'll say modify system/pass equals, and you put the password in quotes. Now, if you don't want to, if you're changing a user's password, and by default, they will be prompted to change the password when they log in. If you're changing it for yourself or some other account that you don't want to change the password all the time, you can use this flag, which is a no pre-expired password.
Like what?
So I just put that in because it's an optional qualifier. You don't have to use that. Yeah, by default, if you don't specify that, then it will prompt you to change it. Next section after that is the process quotas. This is how many jobs you can be running, how many processes you can launch, what priority you're running, how many files you can have open at the same time. All of these are how much memory you can get from the system. This is set on a case-by-case basis. So some of your daemon files and things, you don't want to give them like 4 million blocks of memory. You can kind of drill down on that. So the last part has to do with privs. So note there's two sections. There's authorized privs and there's default privs. The default privs are what you get when you log in, and authorized is what you can have. So OpenVMS doesn't have a root account per se. It uses the system account for most processes, but it can't really be disabled or the system won't work. It can be restricted. We can set a restriction so that they can't get in interactively, which is a good security practice. There's also there's no concept of sudo in VMS. Every account can have any mix of any privs by default or authorized. But and this seems like that would be kind of a loaded gun. But in most cases, in most VMS environments, users are locked into a menu somewhere, so they can't get to DCL to cause any damage. But in order to run some of the jobs or some of the programs, in their menu, they may need access to some resources. So you can give them access to those accounts without worrying about them getting to DCL and causing any damage. So for locking people in menus, the flags that we were talking about earlier, the PWD mix was one of them. Another one is disuser, which I didn't actually talk about, but that there's a flag called disuser that will disable. That replaces no login. And captive and restricted are two other flags that will control whether people have DCL access.
So you're saying the disuser is?
So if you have somebody that leaves the company and you need to disable their account, you can go and disable it, but sometimes people need access to it. So you can just go and say disuser, you set the flag,
okay,
modify username / flag equals disuser, and that will just shut down the accounts. You can't log into it. But if you have batch jobs or things like that, no jobs are going to be able to use the account either because it's disabled.
Because I've seen ours have no disuser.
That's
So that's
intuitive. That's how when you disuser, you do flag equals disuser. To undo that, flag equals no disuser. If I want to remove the password mix, it's no PWDMAX. So
okay.
you have to put no in front of it to negate the flag.
Okay.
You get used to it.
Yeah. That's the hard part so far is getting used to it.
Well, especially if you're doing something in a negative like disuser, you would think you would have a more positive connotation. But so similar to Linux, you have a home directory, you have a bash RC file. You set your customizations up. In VMS, there is a login.com file, and that has I'm going to walk through that one of those in a minute. Example of what kinds of things you can do. You can set up symbols and logicals, which we'll talk about in a moment. But the .com actually is a command procedure. Is short for command procedure. DCL is a command language interpreter, so it will if it knows that it can interpret the commands and run them, then it will. I mean, so you couldn't run login.com because it's not an executable. Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, I put that in bin bash. So symbols, like I can't pause this, but like copy, delete, things like that, purge and rename. One of the things I don't like about Unix and Linux is that when you issue your command, it just goes and it brings you your prompt back. You don't actually know what it did. So one of the first things I do when I get on a system is I'll replace those verbs, the backup, copy, delete, purge, and rename, which are just file movement verbs, and I'll put a / log on them. So when I type copy, I don't have to do copy / log because I defined it in my login up here. There was you also saw some stuff in there near the top. It didn't capture all of it, but these are all, and it doesn't capture the escape sequences, but basically these are escapes. So I can go through. In fact, I use them here. So here we're going to see if we're in interactive mode, and we could be in interactive, or we could be in network mode, or we can be in batch, or we can be in other. You can specify different things. So in this case, I'm going to do a set term / inquire, which means go out and see what kind of terminal I'm hooked up to. And it'll set most of the defaults for that. But then it can say, all right, I want this to be a VT200, no 8-bit, I want to have insert by default. I want to have a word wrap by default. I want the page to be 36 tall by 132 wide. And then here I can do my set by prompt, and you see like this is WT up here for bold, white, and then norm is just set reading back. So I'll say that this is set my prompt for bold red, the node name, and maybe my initials or whatever. This is just, it's not stuff you need to know on the first day, but this I'm just walking it through because we're here. And then you set it back to normal. So that means, if I didn't put this normal in here, then everything I typed after this would also be in red font. And one of the last things we do here, and this is helpful for Linux, TCP/IP define underscore commands. This basically gives you a transparent VMS to Linux IP interface. All the same commands will work. There's a little bit on that in later. All right, so command line. So command line interpreters, DCL, short for digital command language. Digital is the name of the company that launched OpenVMS 48 years ago this Saturday, 25th. Digital owned and developed OpenVMS until they merged with Compaq in 1998. When Compaq was bought by HP in 2002, HP took over VMS, and when HP decided to discontinue support for VMS, the OS and the hardware that it ran on, VSI took it on. And instead of passively maintaining OpenVMS like HP had, VSI immediately started with performance improvements, wider hardware support, and a new version of the OS and layered products, and also proudly worked towards the x86 port, which is available now. So most of the commands are the same going back a couple generations. There was originally VAX, and then there was Alpha, and then there was Itanium or Integrity, which is the brand name. But the commands are mostly the same, but today we're going to be focused on VSI, Itanium, or Integrity OS 8.4. All right, so let's start with the cheat sheet comparing Linux commands to their OpenVMS equivalents. In either OS, there's a lot of different ways to find this info. This is not an exhaustive list, but there's a way or two to get info. So instead of doing an ls CPU, or I think it was used to be like cat etc CPU info, now you can just do a show CPU. The brief display shows just to see the CPU, which ones are started, which ones are not, because you can start and stop CPUs dynamically. That'll show you that. If you do /full, it'll show you caching information. It'll show you the CPU number. The serial numbers, things like that. So you have an option of leaving the full off or not. I'm not going to go through all of these. They're pretty straightforward. But you can notice in the OpenVMS column, it's very English-like. Most of the things, if you want to see something, you say show memory, show device, show default, show users, things like that. We talked a little bit about default. Default is the concept is of a working directory. So if if I CD, I'm changing directory, set default will say put me in this new directory, and same with print working directory will say show default where I am. So you'll hear that phrase default, and that's basically the root concept of what it does. Let's see. Oh, something different when you make dir versus create /dir. But when you're creating an empty file and you use the touch command, it just creates the file. It leaves the header. With VMS, the default, you create a file. It puts you into the editor, so you can start putting things in there, and then you have to, if you edit it out, and then you can save it. Other thing.
Is there a way that to prevent maybe set up a symbol or something like that to prevent setting default into a directory that doesn't exist?
Well, no. The VMS will let you set default if you have a typo or something. You can go there, but it'll come up and say that there's no such directory.
It'll put you in a directory that doesn't exist. Say dir, say no.
Yeah, it's not until you type dir. You can say set default into blah blah blah, and it'll say okay, you're in blah blah blah. If you do a show default or try to do any operations in there, it'll come up and say, oh yeah, this doesn't exist.
Right.
So it will let you make a mistake,
Right.
but then it'll tell you about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, because it'd be hard. It doesn't know exactly. It doesn't know if it was a typo or not until till the file system goes to look at something. So yeah, I'm showing now. I'm actually going to hit some of the ones with the right column notes. when you do a free minus F, you see the memory. You can do a show memory and you slash unit equals bytes. We'll talk about bytes versus blocks. Bytes is just normal, bytes, gigabytes, megabytes. And you can actually use other flags to filter information. Now you can show mem slash physical or show cache information, show the swap, well, not swap file, it's a page file, and your pool statistics and things like that. ifconfig to show network. You can also use the ifconfig command in VMS. If you have the TCP/IP defined commands, if that has been run. We'll talk more about showing device information. When you're showing users, you can also specify, I want to see interactive users, I want to see users across the cluster. I want to see users, I want to see everything which is like the terminal that they're connected on, their process ID, the system that they're on, things like that.
Did you say if config works in VMS?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you can do ifconfig. And there's a lot, once you get the TCP/IP defined commands run, most of because the TCP/IP stack for VMS was born from Linux years ago, or Unix, I'm sorry. So it has its heritage back there. So all of those commands,
Okay.
if you don't, we'll talk about it later. If you don't run that, you can still get to everything by prefacing with the TCP/IP. So it'll be TCP/IP show interface or whatever.
Okay.
Let's see, when you're doing a rename, moving a file, you have move in Linux, and in VMS you have rename. It's a little bit different because the way things work, and there's versioning, which we're going to talk about. But one difference is you can't rename across the device. So if you're on one device, you want to put it on another device with another name, you'd have to copy it and do two operations.
That's I just had to do that this week, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
We were moving files from, well, we were on server B, but we had to move files from server A into there.
Mhm.
And the one guy that we have that's a developer was showing me it. And he showed me, it's like, you can move those files over,
Mhm.
but then you have to go back in to rename them when you're done.
Yeah. Deleting file, you can do an RM. Like I said, it'll just remove. With VMS, when I say delete, I have a /log on there, so I'll get an informational message to say, yes, I deleted this file, or I deleted all of these files because we have VMS versioning to contend with. You can also do a delete/confirm, which will prompt you for each file that you want to delete. There's some cool stuff in there. Editor, you need Nano or whatever your editor du jour is. VMS, there's a bunch of them also, but we're going to talk about TPU today, and we'll talk a little more in detail. Now, if you're losing files in directory, you can do a list, a long list, whatever. In VMS, you can do a directory, but if you want to see, and actually it's on the next screen, if you want to see all the same information, your directory ///date/own, which you can set up as a symbol, similar to what I said I did copy equals copy /log all the time. My dir symbol for directory is directory size dates owner, and I can actually put security on here to see protection masks to that.
Do you get into trouble if you say you were to recreate copy to have that as copy/log? Do you get in trouble if you rename the default copy to that?
Well, the thing is that the things in your login are just for your processes.
Okay.
So it's not a global replacement that everyone is going to use. So, and yeah, some people, I mean, I've run across different customers, and they'll have they'll try and do R for rename, which like when we're coming in and we don't know that it's been changed, will cause us problems because we don't know what it is. Yeah, actually, I think 2 screens up, we'll talk a little bit about creating that. And instead of kill, and there's no kill -9, it's just you stop a process, you do a stop/ID, and you specify the PID, which you can get from the PID will be from if you do a show users /full or whatever. And there's also other ways to see what the processes are if you need to kill something else. Oh, I guess it is not. All right. And so DCL, OpenVMS is not case or space sensitive. That directory /sin equals today is the same as space directory lowercase space/sin equals Todd. I mean, that's a mixed case. Those are both they'll both execute correctly, which is kind of handy because sometimes you're copy and pasting things in, you'll end up with an extra space, but it's okay. So commands can be abbreviated to the point of uniqueness. For example, I can use show for the show command because there's nothing else conflicting with it. But I can't use CO for copy because it natively, because it conflicts with COBOL, configure, connect, continue, convert and copy. I couldn't even use con for any one of those because it would still conflict with configure, connect, continue, or convert. So in that case, you'd have to go to like 4 characters, but most of them, most things you can get by with like 3 characters. And here's what the symbol that I set up in my login.com, where I have directory equals directory size date on. So I don't have to type this in every time. I just type in dir and it gives me all that information. Now, if I don't want all that information or for whatever reason, so dir is the specific symbol, but if I do dire, it's not going to find a match, and it'll just give me the standard listing for a directory, which is like just doing an ls in Linux. It just gives a bunch of file names, no columns or anything. So the concepts of symbols and symbols are actions or verbs, and logicals are nouns. Similar to nouns, logicals are similar to symlinks. So like, for example, of kill, show symbol kill, it does stop process ID, it's a verb. If I do show logical, sys$system points to a place, and that place in this case is sys$system, sys$sysroot, sysexe. We'll talk about this in a minute too. Everything's a tease. All right, so in OpenVMS, OS folder structure is different. There's no var, etc, bin, opt, and things like that, or sbin on the system disk. So, but in general, the sys$system has all your system executable. Sys$manager is the sys$management files and commands. Sys$startup is for startups, and sys$common is for shared system files. This is mostly cluster related, which we will talk about. File extensions don't always indicate the file type. Like .com is a command procedure, .exe is an executable. You use a run with that. DCL command procedures, the way to run them is to use the @ sign before it. A log file is, an ASCII text file. You can edit it or type it or whatever, and text file is also an ASCII text file. So another thing that's different with Linux, there's no need to make a file executable using the chmod. Say I did a show device D to an output file called temp.txt, and then I edit that file and I put analyze disk. I use a little macro to put analyze disk in front of all of that, so I end up with a command procedure that just analyzes every disk that was out there. I save it. I can just do an @ sign of temp.txt, so I can @ sign a text file. I can @ sign a file that's just a.a. So it's not, but DCL will, if it can't interpret it as DCL commands, it will come back and it'll break and tell you it's not going to work. But you can't rely on the file type to be what it is, because it can be something else. A lot of these things, if you're troubleshooting problems and you're just doing stuff, this is not really this is not production kind of stuff. This is stuff that admins will do just to create files to look at things. Did I miss a thing here? So there's two main. There's the file systems. There's no in Linux. You have ext3 and 4 and betterfs and all those. In VMS, there was an ODS1, which was in the backstays. And then the ODS2 and ODS5 are widely in use now. So ODS2 is the more restricted of the two. You can use uppercase alphanumerics plus hyphen, $, and underscore. So it doesn't understand lowercase, or like I said, the system will upcase everything anyway. And the file sizes, you get 39 characters before and 39 after the dot in the middle. So file versions are something that is it's a curse and a blessing. So you can have 32,767 versions of a file in both ODS2 and ODS5. Oh, I'm sorry, I should go back and say ODS5, the ISO Latin 1 Unicode. That means it supports uppercase and lowercase alphanumeric plus the hyphen, $, underscore, and like most of the other characters that are on the number line. It's everything that Unix supports, Linux supports. So by default in the VMS, you can't have an ODS5 system disk just because now case matters, and there's a lot of other reasons. But if you need to, you can have ODS5 devices in your other places in disk arrays. And in order to work with those uppercase and lowercase and get to those other symbols, because if you try and do an operation with something that's got a caret in it, it's not going to understand. So you can do this. You can put this in your login. You can just do it on the fly. It's set process/parse equals extended, and this will use the extended characters for that. So then you'll be able to get to that.
So
Yes.
if you have the ODS 1 and you're migrating to the new 9.4 x86, is that going to cause problems?
Do you have the VAX?
No.
Okay. No. So I actually, it says VAX only, but yeah, ODS 1 is not available on Alpha or Integrity. 2 and 5 are. That is a question I'd have to check with someone on that, because I don't know what it would do, because I mean, it's uppercase alphanumeric, so it doesn't have any you already have restricted character sets. So if you throw more at it, I mean, for example, you just have uppercase alphanumeric, but you don't have the hyphen, the dollar sign, the vax, and the dollar sign and the underscore, you still have 32,000 version limits are not supported. Oh, this might be in the directory area. It's not like you're taking away functionality to go to x86. You already have limited functionality, and it should be backward compatible. But
Okay.
yeah, I would definitely it can.
Because yeah, I'm looking at some of these and I'm recognizing some of the, like ours are uppercase alphanumeric.
Mhm.
We've already come across that file limit on. Well, we came across the issue. The previous system administrators that were the gurus that knew this thing inside and out,
Mhm.
they took care of the problem by setting certain files we have that continually increment to, they get to 1,000, they delete.
Right.
We did find a problem that there was something happened that it created 1,001,
Mhm.
deleted the others, and then the next time it flipped out because it was over 1,000. So it deleted them and then tried to recreate it. It was recreating the wrong file, and all of a sudden we had stuff erroring out. And
Oh no.
we found out that we just had to go in and delete one file, and it was everything came back.
Mhm.
And about 5 years from now, we'll run into the same problem.
Yeah. Wow. So, yeah, that's I maybe I don't know what. Well, obviously just advances in technology. They were able to go to ODS 2, and there's also an ODS 3 and a 4, but I don't know what. No, they've never really used online disk structure. There's a there is a. I don't think I missed it. I'm sorry. I need to go back and check. Did this login? I had a listing of directory of a Linux screen and a VMS screen that were side by side. You could see the differences. 28, 29, 30. All right, let me keep moving on. Maybe it's further up. All right, so the file specs is another thing that differs between Linux and VMS. In Linux, you have slash or dot slash folder, and then subfolders have slashes between them, and then the file name dot type. In VMS, it is device, and you'll have a colon. The colon will separate the device from the rest of everything else. And then this bracket, you can have a root and a dot subdirectory name, or you can just have the directory name. That's why this is kind of two different things. But everything that's directory related or folder related is in these brackets. And then you get to the file name. So the file name usually, and for ODS2, will only support a dot. You can't have multiple delimiters in there. And the type can be, like I said, whatever. And it is more than 39 characters now. But then you have a semicolon, and then you have the version number. I'm not going to go through all of these. This came out of one of our, I think it was the user's manual for VMS. It's in the library. But so there's one of the major differences is that, like I said, the device. So I can change, if I do a set default, I can change default to another device and another directory at the same time. I don't have to go specify, my next partition or whatever. So that's different, and the version number is different. So let's see, file versions. Yeah, they're a little bit about this. So some of it I already talked about. OpenVMS supports 32.767 versions of the same file. This gives you non-destructive editing, which means you can go back. It's not like it's it allows you to go back, and if you're say changing some code and like this one worked at version 43, and then you started making some changes and things just went off the rails, and you can go back to it. So it's like a primitive version of Git actually. So you can go back as long as you haven't purged out the files, they're still there. You can still work with them. So caution with an ODS5 disk is because it's case sensitive, uppercase file 1.capital.txt version 1 is not the same as lowercase file 1.lowercase txt version 1. So that you just need to be aware of as you're working with the files. This is probably more so for VMS people because we got used to using ODS2 for so many years. So we can use the purge command to delete older versions, and we can keep a certain number of them. So if, let's say I have 40 versions of a file and I just want to keep the last 5, I can do a /keep = 5 to keep the 5 most recent versions. I could also delete. I could use the delete command to pick out specific ones. But here's the thing with the versioning: when you reach 32.767, no more files are going to get created. So you can purge it and it'll keep one version, but that one version is going to be 32.767, so you're still not going to be able to create another one. So when you do that, and I think you had mentioned about this when you get to 1,000 versions, so you have to rename 32.767 to version 1. So this is a little shortcut thing. So when I'm doing it, I can do a rename /log. File 1.text 32.767, and I didn't put a file name, I just put a specified a semicolon 1. I could also use the full file spec, but that's a nice little shortcut. Directory files, dir, will always be version 1. I'll only have one version. If you see a directory version 2, there's something wrong. You can change drives with the same command. You don't have to cd to another drive and then cd to the folder, like in this example. I was sitting in user 003 Seder, and I did a set default to sys$sys which was another device, and 6 zeros is the master file directory, the top level directory, is the top of the disk. Well, I'll get into that in a minute. And then if I show device, I'm already there. So it's a little quicker to put them into a single command. You can also use a relative navigation. You still need to use the brackets or dots or dashes. So in this case, I was in my top level home directory, or it's my home directory. And then I did set default to .kits.test, which same as doing a slash, and then there I am. So in here, I can do a set default, and I can do one dash will bring me up one level, 2 dashes will bring you up 2. You can't use dots for these. You need to use dashes. That's caveats.
Dot is going down, dashes is going up.
Well, didn't think about that one. No, because technically, if I was to go from cedar.kits.test and I wanted to go,
so if you were in Seder, if you wanted to go to test, it would be set def cedar.test.kits.test.
Right, and which this was from here I could do this, but I could have also done set default user 003 cedar.kits.test. I could have done the whole full spec, which was the combination of these 2 lines. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But I think, I didn't really think about the way you said, because when you're doing a dash, you were always going up a directory, and then dot is down. I like that. Thank you.
Okay. That was. I'm just trying to keep it in my head between Linux, Windows, and OpenVMS is.
We have a guy, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He set a symbol up for up and down. Sets it up.
Yeah, I have that. Also. There's a lot of things that'll speed up your day. Yeah. All right. So we talked a little bit about logicals earlier. Logicals are like symlinks. They point to places or things. But there's different levels of them. There's one, and this goes from the bottom up basically. So the process level is where you're where you're logged into. So you can set a logical. I'm trying to think of a good example. So you can set one there, or you could set it at the job level, which is everything that your process is running. The group level, this goes back to the UIC we were talking about. So you can have a group, it'll be LNM underscore group underscore blah, blah. So say, yeah, it's over here. Say you had all of your accounting users were in group 23. You can set all the logicals for them so that they get to their, they get to the storage they need to get to the files that they need to get to. And that would be set in the group level. And everybody in that group 23, we get the same definitions. The system level, you have these are things that are available to all users of the system. Like sysaller system, sysmanager, things like that we talked about. And cluster glide, this will cross nodes. We didn't really talk about clusters, and we won't get too much into it. But these are things that definitions that are the same across all of the nodes in your cluster. So we have some built-in logical definitions via VMS instead of standard in, standard out, standard error, or sysdollar input, which is a user's terminal keyboard. Sysdollar command is when you're reading from an input file. Sysdollar output is normally the user's terminal, but you can redirect. A lot of commands, many of the DCL commands will support the /out qualifier to dump things to an output file. Standard error is sys error, which is actually the user terminal, but that's not the same as sysdollar error log, which is to capture system errors, like if you have problems with your NIC or devices or things like that. Those will go into the system log, which we'll hit on a little bit when we talk about monitoring. Your home directories is sysdollar log, and that's built in when you log in, you get that. There's no Unix, Linux counterpart for this, but we do. VMS does support pipe, but it's a little bit different than what you're used to. So sysdollar pipe is a logical that you'll have available as you're using it. So if you want to see all the logicals on all the tables, you would do show logical /table start, but it's going to dump screens and screens of input. So you usually don't want to do that, but if you're curious. All right, so for example, showing and defining logicals, define at the process level, 2025 Bootcamp, we're giving it a value of totally rocks. And if I do a show logical 2025 star, you can use the wildcard. I see that sitting in the process table and it doesn't show up anywhere else, which is good. So so then I can deassign the logical and then try and show it again, and I'll see that there's no translation. This is the message. This is the message that you'll see if you're showing a logical that doesn't exist. There's the question of why am I doing a define, but then I'm doing deassign when I could use assign. That is that's a Chevy Ford kind of decision. Some people, the only difference between that, if I was to do an assign /process, I would put the value first, and then I would put the assignment second. So it would be assign /proc, totally rocks in quotes, space 2025 Bootcamp. The rest of the show logical, all this stuff would be the same. So, but then I can, if you really want to keep assign and deassign, aligned, you can do that. So both of those will work. Except if you're doing an assign, you just have to reverse the definitions. Here's the pipe command. All right, so pipe works pretty much like the same as Linux. It uses the same operators and things. There's a few differences though. Pipe in VMS needs to be, pipe processing needs to be preceded by the actual pipe verb. You can't just start typing something and then slam a pipe in there because it won't understand it. And there's also nothing like grep. Instead, what we do is we do a search sysdollar pipe. So this, and that's a logical that we just talked about. So this is a line from a command procedure that, so it does a pipe show system /node equals the node that I'm plugging in. This is a variable. And then I can use the pipe, and then I'm going to search, and I don't want to see any warnings or no output. I just want to go out silently and look at this. I'm going to search sysdollar pipe for a string called VMS SPI $system. And if it's there and the status is 1, then I can set this new logical, new node sys equals running. So functionally, it works the same. Okay, to see file attributes of a particular file. So this is going to cover some of the information that we've already talked about. So if I do a directory /full, and this is my login.com, the most recent version, which is version 55, I'll see here that this is this 3-number thing is called the file ID. This is the actual file address on the disk. The files can have aliases and other names, but this is always a concrete value. Blocks down there. The version limit we were talking about, I think you had mentioned before. You can specify, although you have 32.767 as your value, if you don't want to keep all that baggage in your directory, you could say, I don't want to ever keep more than 5 files or 20 files or 1,000 files or whatever it is. So you can specify a version. In this case, by default, when you create a file, it does come with a version. The file attributes, record format, carriage control, carriage return, any RMS attributes. So file protection, excuse me. So we're going to hit this in a second, I think. So that we have system read, write, execute, delete, owner read, write, execute, delete, group read, execute, and world has no access. We're going to get into this and how this corresponds with Linux permissions. And down here, this thing, it's a 6-block file, but it actually takes up 16 blocks on the disk. And that's similar to any with what your allocated size is versus what your actual file size is. Let's see, protections, make sure to finish. So here's what the top level directory, the master file directory of this particular disk. So you'll have different parts that are part of the file system. All of these sys files, bad blocks, bitmap, GPT, indexf. Indexf.sys is similar to your file card catalog in the library. And this is set up, this is default VMS blocks. And the VMS block is 512, it's a half a megabyte. So if we want to, we can change our process. If you don't want to do the math and you're used to doing things in bytes, you could do a set proc/units. So this is set your process and report units in bytes. And now I do a directory of indexf.sys and it shows that it's 64.45 megabytes. And in my calendar, I took 132,000 times 512, and it came up at 67 blob, with 1,024. It's the same size. Okay, and we see. So yeah, I set up Ubuntu on my laptop using Windows WSL. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's pretty handy to have something that's right on your system. So that's where a lot of these things came from. But you got Linux, what the system owner and everybody else is, and who the owners are and the size and all these. So if I do a directory/security VMS, I'll see that this information over here, it's not showing me everything it showed me before. It's not giving me the headings, but it just gives me the 4 values: system, owner, group, and world. So there's no, I guess, yeah, there's no system owner. Yeah, you just have owner, group, and everybody else. So in VMS, you do have the system, and normally system has access to everything. Also, Linux doesn't have a delete thing, so I can set this up so that you don't have, you have access to read, write, and execute, but you can't delete the file, which is an extra protection. Excuse me. In order to change these things, you don't have to use chown or chmod. You can just use set security, and you can pile them. You can double them up. So in this file, set file/protection equals system, read, write, execute, and world has read. So I took away the delete for that. I didn't have to specify the ones that I'm not changing. And I'm going to change the ownership to the system for test.txt version 3, which is this file. So it went from here, now it's system, and now I have, oops, there's all those things I was looking for. So I have, you can see how, I gave it, and now world has read access. So again, it's, you can do multiple things, and most of those are under set file/protection. All right, and here's that screen that I thought was earlier. So they look pretty similar. This is just a long list of Etsy, I guess, and the command in there. And then this is the same directory/security of sysdollar manager. So I have the protection, I have the group and the owner, and this is, in this case, is all the same. I have the size, I have the date, size, and then the file names. I just don't have the colors. I don't have to change colors. All right. So there's a lot of editors. If you need to edit one of these files, there's several available. But most of the default one and the most common one is TPU, which stands for Text Processing Utility. You might want to do a show symbol edit on your system if you already have it. If not, you can do an edit/TPU. And in this case, this test.txt, this is a line, the other line has dog in it, last line. So to work your way around in here, if you do Shift F6, it will bring you to this command prompt in the editor window. And then from there, I can do a set keypad EDT. The reason that EDT was one of the editors that was prevalent before TPU, but you can emulate EDT, and I'll show you the reason why in a minute. And then, so when you're done modifying your file, if you do a LBTT keypad. Oh yeah, so and to get ahead of myself, I'm sorry. So you set keypad EDT, and then we're going to do a help keypad, and that is going to give me this map. This is a screenshot of what all your available commands are within the editor. So this is your center stack of your keyboard. There's no, in the old LK DEC keyboard days, there was a separate key called the do key. We don't use it anymore. Actually, that Shift F6 replaces the do key. And there also in the old days used to be a gold key on the keyboard, and this is your number pad over here. So the gold key is I think it's the num lock now. So you'll have all of these. They're kind of soft keys. So you'll have Shift F6. You can erase, you can delete a word, you can restore a word, delete a character, restore. You can change case. You can select a word. Here's your select button down here. So there's and then you can navigate using any of these, previous screen, previous window, etc. There's a lot you can do with TPU, way more than we can get into today.
That keypad right there is my nemesis.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the default, some of the default things with TPU they don't do this. This is why, I mean, again, there's many different ways to do it, but you can. Like the select button, I expect to hit keypad 0 and be able to select and then start navigating to pick up words or lines or whatever I want to delete. It doesn't. I wish I remembered what it did do, but it doesn't select. It's something else in native TPU. So when you do the set keypad, it just gives you the ability to look at this and have a visual of what you can.
Is CPU equivalent to EBT or Eve?
Yes, Eve was an extensible VMS editor, and TPU was part of that. So Eve, I think Eve was like a group of editor functions. EDT is it's an older one. It's command line, and you can do a lot of the same things that you can do with TPU, but there's also a lot of limitations of things that you can't do.
I went to OpenVMS rentals. The only thing they talked about was the
I hear, yeah, a TPU and Eve I hear interchangeable, but I mean I know there's a hierarchy to it, but people refer to them in both of them.
TPU is the engine. Eve tells the engine what to use. Basically, Eve is implemented as a small TPU section. That has screen behavior again.
Yes, thanks, Jim. Yeah, you can create a section file.
You can create your own section.
Yeah, normally I don't think it has its own, or if it is, it's in like Systeller library or someplace. So to get out when you're in an editor, you can do a Shift F6 until you Shift F6 to quit. That'll bring you to the command line and quit or exit, or Control Z to exit and save. If you're in there and you do a Control Z and you didn't want to save it, it's going to save it anyway. But you're going to have another version, so you can delete it and you haven't lost anything. So
now is that the one where you can Control Z and then quit for not writing it and exit for writing it?
That's EDT's native behavior. It's not native here. Native here is if you Control Z it will save, exit and save. I think there might be a way to set it up to do that, but every site's different, and that's in the section file that he was mentioning, because you can have like a site-wide or a system-wide section file. Okay, so OpenVMS devices. Well, Unix is primarily file-driven. VMS tends to be more device-driven. So let's take a look at that. There are a lot of devices out there with different classifications. If you show device, it just show device, it'll show you a long list of everything. But some of the major ones that we work with are disks, and under here DGA is a fiber-based disk, DKA is SCSI-based, DQS is a CD-ROM, DNF is a NFS disk, and DSA is a shadow disk. I don't think we're going to talk too much about shadowing today. Your console, and you do have a specified dedicated console in VMS where I know you can shut down and bring up a system from any terminal in Unix. But over here, we do have one that is dedicated for that. We had a little bit about that. Because if you use your own terminal, you can shut down a system from your regular terminal, but the problem is once your network interface that connected you to the system is shut down, you don't know, and it's kind of like going around the dark side of the moon. You have to wait until the system comes back. So you're always better off going through OPA0, which is going to be through an ILO or management processor or like console manager if you're using an old an alpha or something like that. Your network interfaces are EW and EI based on where they are in the system. Fiber channel drives, fiber mailboxes are memory structures that processes use to pass information between themselves. They're not really interactive things, but they are. You'll see a lot of them out there. For magnetic tapes, MGA is fiber-based and MKA is SCSI-based. And your terminals, TNA is a telnet, FTA is it's SSH. It's called a pseudo term, but I don't know why they came up with F. RTA is a remote terminal, and that is if you were using DECnet, because that's the other protocol that we didn't really talk about, but you can hop between systems using that. Just for identification, there's nothing you really need to do with most of these things. I mean, you can filter them out. If you want to say, I just want to see fiber channel, you can show device FG, or if I want to see specific MGB, or if I want to see all the devices, I'll just do a show device D. So there's different, there's different ways of methods of accessing a disk. When a system, I might want to start at the bottom of this one, it makes sense. So when you mount a system, so this is how we mount it on the system. So we'll do a mount, and we'll mount it across the cluster. We're not going to set on a message for it. We're not going to rebuild a quota. And we're going to have the device, actually this device, $1 DGA1, and the volume label of it is work. And actually, I think I typed this in right because it should be work 01. And this is the logical name that we can define it to. Now, this does not always have to equate to this. So, this could be data 1, and I could still call it work. So what we're going to walk through here is if I set default to, here's my device, DGA1, it's mounted on 6 nodes in the cluster. 18.5 gig is the volume label name. So if I go there in the top level, and I am there, and if I set default to instead of $1 DGA1, I'll set default to work 01, and I'm still there. It's, although it looks a little different. Now I can specify set default to disk $work 01, and I am now in disk $work 01. Now these look like they're all the same, but now if I show logical work 01, it points back to $1 DGA1. If I show disk $work 01, it points to DGA1 also. So excuse me, we can use any one of these formats to get to this disk, and sometimes a user will call up and say, hey, I can't get to such and such on data 3. They know it's data 3, but it might be, might not be what the label is. That the label might be, I don't know, accounting for or something. So this is a way to kind of help cross-reference where these things are. Does that make sense? Or okay. Excuse me. If I use a /full qualifier to see more details about a specific disk, there's a plethora of information here, most of which you don't need to know unless you're looking for it. This is going to tell me that this drive is sitting in an HP 2000 G3 fiber channel. I have 139, it's 139 gig. I have 17 gig free. The device protections there. There's expansion size. There's a lot of other information in here. Like so, you may or may not want to know. This is the fastest way, unless you set up a symbol. This is the fastest way to see how much free space is on a drive. A lot of people have written command procedures that will go out and you just run it, and it'll pull the device and do the math for you and come out. And this information on the bottom, this is an ODS5 disk, right through cache is enabled, and I'm mounted on all these other systems. Not a whole lot of information for all of that information that's up there, but it's there if you need to see. It's also got the disk geometry of the cylinders and sectors and tracks. And also, oh, this is the second page of that. So this was going to show our I/O paths to device. Now this, if you need to track this back to a WID, all your WIDs are listed here. In this case, this is telling me this is the primary path back for this drive, and it's current. This is not always the same thing. This, although this is primary, if for whatever reason we timed out on some of these paths, this one might be current, for example. It's just, it'll give you a status of where, who's hosting it, last time it was switched over there and things like that. There's some decent information. This is more involved detective work, which again goes beyond day one stuff. All right. Any questions? No.
Making sense so far.
Okay.
This is basically perfect for us. This is exactly what we got.
I'm glad you're here then.
Yeah.
All right. It is yeah, I guess we went overtime. You want to continue on? You guys want to take a break? It's 10 after 2 now.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about monitoring and security reporting. So there's no exact replacement for top or HTOP or perf, but the monitor utility has, we'll show you information for all these different class names. You can do, you can monitor everything, monitor cluster, you can monitor DECnet, monitor disks, IO, etc. You can see what they're all are. Monitor system, and then you can add a bunch of, whatever you're monitoring, you can also add command qualifiers too, which are all of these. And there's one in here, this /record. We're going to see this one later because we're yeah. Anyway, so you can specify beginning and end input. There's all kinds of things you can add to that. It's pretty full functioning. So if I do a monitor system, we'll see some insight into overall performance and resource utilization. So the system wasn't doing a whole lot. Keep in mind, if you're looking at this will be the number of CPUs. So this is a two CPU system, so it can only max out to 200%. If you have 16 CPUs, you'll see this at 1600. It can be a little daunting to look at. Right now, we're at 14%. Page fault rate, this is how, page faults are process, that's memory that belongs to your process and how quickly they're moving in and out. Your direct I/O rate to disks, how much your free page file size is, buffered I/O rate, and this tells you how many systems are on. There's 69 processes on the system. This is one of our lab systems. So LEF is local event flag. This is waiting for something. Hibernate is like I'm not waiting for it, and I'm waiting for something to wake me up. Computable is this is what's in the process. Computable is on its way to the CPU. Current is what's in the CPU. Page fault weight, as we talk about these page faults, this is you hardly ever see this at a non-zero number because of back in before performance was as good as it is now, we would see processes that would have to wait for memory to get moved in. Miscellaneous wait states, that should always be 0. And these are, if you exhaust all of your page file, you have in VMS, you have a page file and a swap file. So the page file is memory that gets moved in from just specific pages of memory that get moved in and out of your process, where a swap file is like your whole process gets moved out to disk, to a file, to a space on the disk. And it has to be moved back in, to do any more work because we just need to free up space and free memory. Not so much a problem in modern day, but it's still, so that's what these are. These are local event flag outswapped, and outswapped. So these are actually in the swap file, not the page file. Usually you're interested, depending what you're looking for. You want to see how CPU, if the CPU is pegged out, or you have a super high I/O rate and you're getting slow response. Monitor cluster gives you similar information. It's just a little wider view. It's going to show you, the CPU memory, I/O, and locking information. So it looked right at this point. I think I was on a different system, and A21 looks kind of busy, so we'll go over there. So I connected the IA21 and used monitor process / top CPU. This is going to give you similar to your top command. So not a lot going on, but this Apache Tomcat. So this is the PID, this is the process, and it's taking up 84% of the CPU. So now that I'll copy this PID, and then I can put the PID. I could do a show process / continuous. ID equals the PID to get a continuous performance display. And I can watch, this is obviously a still one, but I can see that at this point when I snagged it, it was in the hibernate state. Process priority, I don't want to talk too much about that. Normally it should be, for interactive processes, it should be 4, batch jobs should be 3. And it goes up to 32, but anything over 16 is outside the realm of user. So here's the PID. It's got two days, 17 hours of CPU time. This is all the I/O that it's done, and here's the actual process of running. So this, if it's like say a batch job that's moving and it's opening different files and closing, this could change as you're watching it. It could be doing different things. All right. So VMS doesn't have a syslog utility, but all the events that can be captured and reported on via the audit utility. So here's all the options. I went and I enabled. So well, real quick, I have there's two parts of this. There's alarms and there's audits. Audits are what go to the file. Alarms are just what gets reported to the system. So you don't have to, just make them up and give you this, but everything is going to the file. So and we talked about break-ins earlier on. We talked about the limitations. When you're logging in, you can say you can't log in to batch, dial-up, local, remote. These are all the different things that I can in the UAF that I can really clamp down on how people get logged in. But this is really if I left this running, this would bring my system to a to a great slowdown, because what's happening in this is everything. So maybe it's on the next one. Anyway, but anytime you touch an ACL, you mount a drive, change a password, install something in memory, change the time, change a system parameter. All of these things will trigger an event that will get written into the audit file. Logins, log failures, break-ins, and privilege use. So if I use any of these privileges, it's going to put an entry in the audit file. Privilege, whether if I use it or whether privilege failure, and if I have a file access failure or success using any of these privs. I mean, it's really it really covers everything. So audit it's part varlog bit. It's part varlog offlog and part wtemp. That it kind of provides the functionality of those.
So does this audit dump it to a log file?
Yep. Yeah, we're gonna look at how to get. So yeah, I'm gonna talk about enabling and disabling them, and then we'll talk about how to get information out of it. So in this case, yeah, I gave it everything, but that's unreasonable. So here's how I undid it. I did a set audit / disable equals all, and I have to specify audit or alarm, and we have those two different categories. So that if I disabled everything and then it went in and said enable authorization sysgen, which is system parameter changes, and break-ins, all break-ins, dial-up, whatever, network. And I want to specify again audit. If I wanted all these things to go to alarm, I would specify alarm. And if I do a show audit, I'll see that this has been updated down here. So break-in is dial-up, local, remote, etc. And then the alarms I didn't touch, so those are going to be different.
Now, are the alarms just brought up on like the console screen?
Yes. They'll be. I'll answer that soon.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it does go out to. There's a utility for that. So again, audits and alarms are separate categories. If you everything goes to the journal, usually it's in SysDollar Manager. You could define it to go somewhere else, but in general, people don't. Unless they're in a cluster, and they'll put it on a cluster common drive, because SysDollar Manager is on the system disk, and name may not be mounted on every node in the cluster. You can do it to see where it is. You do a show. No, you don't. You go show audit / journal. Alarm events go to the opcom log, usually system manager operator.log. And to find out where that is, if you show logical OPC $log file name _name, there's a lot of OPC logicals about what you can do and what you can report on and things like that. But that's the one that's going to point to where the file is. So opcom, it reports events to terminals in real time. You can do a help / reply for more information. A couple of the really common commands are do a reply / enable, reply / disable. I haven't specified that out. And a reply / stash will tell you anything that's outstanding, because some replies, some opcom messages go out and they don't require a response. Some of them will have an entry number, and you'll say reply /2 equals, and then you can add whatever information it's looking for. So printers, some examples of what you might see if, on the printer category, you might see more of the old days when you had line printers that it ran out of paper. For tapes, you might, if you're doing a backup and it's going to recall, you need the next tape, or if you have cluster messages. These are all, so you have central printer, tapes, disks, device. You have all these categories, and then you'll have 12 categories that you can assign to whatever you want. If I'm doing jobs, I'll usually assign one to Oper 12 because nobody ever uses that. So yeah, if I do a reply / disable, it's been disabled. Enable equals security, then I see that all I have in my operator status is security here. We do a reply status. There's nothing out there waiting for anything, but I'll see that I have the security thing enabled. All right, so this is the outcome message that came out in the background, or it was actually another terminal when I made all those audit changes. So it's going to tell me who the PID was. It was me, username Seder, and I changed these auditing flags. And actually, it was so many of them that it was truncated. I could do an analyze audit to see it, but this was in the this came out in opcom. And these few alarms were tripped during the recent login and subsequent failed login attempt. So I went security state stat, let's see, after class name file, auditing flags, none. So there was nothing there. And then I added, I thought I added a PWD mix. Oh, no, this was authorization because I had a failure. So this was a break-in attempt from opcom. I'll also see, I can see the break-in attempt from the audit log by doing it this way. So I'll do an analyze audit / since and I had to do it by time because I don't want to see all this stuff from the whole day. And I was able to specify since equals a timestamp and select equals a user and select equals my name. And this gave me the 3 login failures. And then this is when I made the modification. This is what I did. I added a PWD mix to that. And that's that one. Analyze. I can also isolate by event and then do a /full because I'll just get an entry number up here. But if I do a /full, it'll give me a lot more information. So select equals user equals Seder, event equals authorization /full. Will give me all of these. Again, something I didn't mention earlier, for qualifiers in VMS, they don't use dashes or double dashes, with the exception of if you're working with TCP/IP or something that's like that. Everything is all the parameters and qualifiers use slashes. The accounting utility is another one that also report on system events. It's similar to var log, last log. So in this case, I don't think everything was enabled, but I didn't bother enabling everything. But this was going to show me any process termination, interactive, login failures, sub-process termination, detached jobs, batch jobs, network jobs, print jobs, the whole thing, which is still not everything. Now, the accounting stuff goes to, if you show logical accounting with no I, that will point to where the file is. And in this case, because I want it to be cluster-wide, it's on a cluster common disk. But this will give you the definition of it. And you'll need this If you don't, it sits in SysDollar Manager. So up at this, if you want to look and see where your accounting file is before you start. Otherwise, if you don't specify the logical accounting with the command, like I did here, because I have it's up here. So this is going to tell me go look wherever this is. That's where the file is. Go look for it. So I did an accounting /instance equals 2119. User equals me. Here's my login failure, similar to what we saw over there, but it's not as much useful information until I add a /full to it. So this is going to tell me more about it. I did an RTA. So I did a set host 0. This is using DECnet. And I was going to, setting host to myself, my 21 to 21, user authorization failure, all my timestamps, process. So it's got a lot of the same information that that audit has. Accounting was originally, well, kind of originally for if you were trying to do a chargeback of CPU utilization, this is where that information gets logged. So if you say, oh, if we need to, how many, keep picking on the accountants, but how much CPU time did the accounting use this month? If you're going to charge back and split your costs across the computer. Not so much practice anymore, but this is still a useful tool. All right, so to summarize, here's where the monitor data goes. You can go to SysDollar error log, which I didn't really talk about, but there was no errors on the system, but hardware errors are mostly in there. And you can use analyze /error /ELV, which is error log viewer, and then specify where the file is. Accounting, designated user activity, login, log out, print, etc. Audit, designated system events, which it'll cover most everything. Opcom, designated messages from networks, printers, and disk primarily. But you'll see sometimes if you have a system crash, you won't, some of the last gasps and things that come out are like messages that will be pertinent to the system coming down, like, hey, I just ran out of processes, or hey, I just, this happened. I'll see those in Opcom also, so that's a place to look if you're trying to troubleshoot a crash. Monitor utility, that is where we saw a lot of the stuff that can be recorded out to a file for review for a process called T4, which we'll be talking about, and other output files. Custom DCL procedures can collect data to files. If you're running job logs, those will go out. Crash dumps, you usually go to SysDollar system and a file called sysdump.dmp. And system process dumps, like the queue manager crashes, you'll have dumps like that. So you have, it captures almost everything that goes on the system, just in different places. All right, what are you doing for time anyway? What do we go till 2? 1:50. Till 3, yeah. Okay. Wow. Okay, I'm gonna go 1. All right. So queues, batch and print. So non-interactive stuff. VMS doesn't use cron. It uses something called queue manager. And it's queue manager, and there's some files that go with it. I didn't get too deep into this process because there's a lot to it, and I'll probably do a separate video for just handling stuff like this. But I just wanted to be familiar with it. So when you'll have a queue set up, a queue manager set up, and then you can set queues up, and queues contain job entries, and job entries are what gets done, and that's how you track things. If you want to see the status of something, you'll just show entry 111. But you can see when you set up a queue, it's got whether it starts automatically when the system comes up, what state it's in. It's right now, it says idlers, no jobs. Base priority job limit, this is going to run 1 job at a time. I can specify this to as many jobs as I want, but the problem is you have to, and this is to help control your processing time. So like if you have stuff going on at night, I mean, you don't want to run 1,000 jobs running at the same time if you only have 8 CPUs. So you can control that way. Also, if you want, these are low priority jobs, you don't want them to run and interfere with user performance, you can specify that. And you also have protection on the queue. All right, so using /full will show you everything about a job. So in this case, the disk maintenance job that we have, which was entry 111, It's holding until 16 October at 3 in the morning. It's going to run here. I'm going to keep the log. Here's what the log is. If I want to find it, it's going to be tools, disk maintenance A18.log. I'm not going to print it. This is was a default in the old VMS days. You should print stuff out to your printer, so we don't want to waste the paper on that. Priority 100 is normal. And if the system fails, I'm going to restart this here. And this is the actual file that's running. So I can see everything I need to know about what's going on with this job by looking at the entry number. So some of the other queue and entry manipulation command, you can do a stop queue, which will pause it. A stop queue reset will stop it. If I want to start a queue, I can, to see all the other things I can do with the help, I can do a set queue or set entry. I can do a set entry /after equals such and such or /fold. There's a lot of different things you can do. Oh, some down there. Show entry /fold, delete entry equals an entry number. Set entry / if it's on hold, select entry /release. Or if it's timed and you want to put it on hold, or you can actually, when you submit it, you can put it on hold so that it's not going to run to specifically let it go. Printer queues and entries behave similarly. I have a printer queue, it's stopped, auto start, and then it'll be node name, and then SRQ040 is the print server name. Could be an IP address, could be, if it's in DNS, it'll be a server name. 9100 is always the port for these kind of queues. The mounted form is default, so it's going to print on whatever kind of paper is in there, basically, and what kind of printer it is. So it also supports LPD printers, and if you look, you see TCP LPD, and you have print cap, which you can manipulate it with. So yeah, some print commands, and these are some of the other things you can pop in there. So I can say print and use a form called landscape to print in landscape. I can specify do this many copies. This will put a flag page, a banner of like, hey, this is this job. Print this after 9 o'clock, print and then delete it, delete the file, print and then hold it in the queue, print, and then send the setup file, which is, it's usually a PCL-based file that you set up ahead of time that goes in front of the job to set it up for if it's made different font sizes or different things like that. You can do that. When you're submitting, which is how you get stuff into the queue. You can do help submit for more information, but I will submit, specify a queue. There's also the option, if you don't specify a queue, there's a queue called sys$batch that you can define. Sys$batch that you can define. That will take, it's just a generic, and same with sys$print. So I can specify that restart. I can submit job on hold. I can submit a job not to run until 2100. I can submit to not print and then delete when it's done. These are just random things I put in there just to mix and match. And I can also give it a name so I can identify it. It won't show up as batch _421 or whatever. And then there's the routine.
Does VMS have drivers for laser print, like the 8.4 version?
For what are you looking for?
Well, we lost our last line print. It's died.
Okay.
And the only thing we have on our network is a laser, but what we do is we save things to a text file, FTP them over to the Windows box, and then print.
Oh, okay.
It has a
you can
minute.
Well, unless is a special formatting or it's just text or
No, it's just text files, just ASCII files.
If you set up a queue, so you'll have the IP address of whatever it is on Windows. You can specify that on this side. You can do initialize /queue, and then specify the IP address that was in quotes, and then whatever the IP address or host name, and then 9100 is the port name that it's expecting, and you should be able to print directly to it from VMS. All right, backup utility. This is a good full function and for backup and restore. And when combined with AVS, it's a great library tool too. So let's look a little bit about backup. I'm not going to cover too much of this, but just how this is actually, this is going to come when we're talking about versions before, this is going to come into play. All right, so OpenVMS has a native backup utility. If you can do help backups or more, that's capable of full or incremental backups and restores of files, directories, and entire disks. Backup uses containers called save sets, or similar to tar files. Backup save set formats incompatible with most external enterprise backup solutions, as is the OpenVMS file format, which is why there's a couple like Commvault has an agent for it. Net Backup does an okay job. There's a couple of other ones, but in general, what's that?
ABC, ABS.
Well, yeah, ABS is local. Yeah, that's an internal.
ABC is also the third party.
Oh, okay, okay. Thank you. All right, so on this one, I'm gonna do a backup /log of systeller login.com. Hit the wrong button again. I'm gonna do them all. I'm gonna use a wildcard. We never talk about wildcards, but you can use wildcards a lot of places. So, and I'm gonna dump those into my systeller login area called example.bck, and I'm gonna do /save to specify that it's a save set. So here's the output from it. I see I did version 56 through, it was lower than this, but this is all I have room for on the page. I think I had 10 versions. All right, so then, so I copied them all, and now I want to, I'm gonna do a backup /list to look at what's the contents of example.bck that I just created. So here's the command that I use to create it, which is pretty handy to have because a couple years down the road, if you ever need to, look at the save set and so how did this get here, you'll have like what system it was, what node it was created on, who the person was, date, time, all that stuff. But here's here's my files that I backed up, and I'm gonna keep an eye on version 51 here. Something else in here. Restore 51. Okay. All right, so now let's restore the file. Notice that I've selected version 51, but didn't specify the version in the output. Also, I didn't create the example directory. So I'm going to dump this out. This is my input spec. I'm going to put it out into cedar.example.login.com. This is the continuation character to get to another line, the dash. So in the process, it created a directory example, and then it created my file. But it created version 1, although I specified version 51. And that is because of this here. So if I do a directory, I see that's version 1. Now, if I leave the backup command with no version, it'll create the original version number. So I use the same command, and I leave off that. It created a version blah, 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 example version 51. So this, if I leave a semicolon, it means give me the next available version. So in this case, there was nothing in example. So created, there was nothing there. So version 1 was 1. If I put it into a directory where there was already a bunch of files with the same thing, for example, if I went back to my home directory, and I forgot what I had, whatever 57 or whatever my version was, it would have created version 58. You may or may not want that. A lot of times people just restore to a different directory and pull out what they need. But yeah, the point is, like, you can specify, if you don't specify a semicolon, it'll create the same version that you had, which is handy. All right, system shutdown and reboot. Again, this is, I didn't get into the whole thing of this. Normally, a day one or even a week one, you probably don't want, hopefully you won't be called on to shut the system down. In the system account, there are symbols set up for reboot and shutdown. And they basically just run at @ systeller system shutdown, and it answers a bunch of questions. So these are actually parameters that we can pass to we can pass up to 16 of these to a command procedure as long as we accommodate them in the code. But in this case, we have reboot and we have a system for shutdown, and they're all the same except for this one here. So this is the questions that they're asking. How many minutes until shutdown? 0. Standalone is sorry, if it's already in brackets, that's the default answer. So I don't have to actually specify things here. Don't have to specify anything here or here. Normally, you want to specify a site-specific shutdown procedure because, like, things like shutting down databases, you want to do things in an orderly fashion. You don't want to just like pull the rug out. Should an automatic reboot be performed? No. I can specify yes for that. And I have some options. When's going to be up later. And if I'm taking it out of a cluster, I'm going to remove a node, or I'm shutting the cluster down, or powering it off, or all of these things. I didn't actually go through this because I didn't want to shut the system down, but that's what this looks like. And that's, like I said, that's what those parameters up there will answer these questions. All right, TCP on OpenVMS. A lot of the stack came from the Unix world, so many of the commands work the same, syntax same switches. So if I do a ping, nslookup, ifconfig, netstat, they all have they're all the same executables, our version of it, but it has TCP IP dollar in front of it. So then when you specify and it gives you those symbols, now I can just use traceroute VMS software and obfuscated all this. But basically, I mean, it works the same. So I didn't want to get into too much detail with this. Clusters. Cluster can have as few as 2 nodes, as many as 96. There's many dedicated interconnects. Most of them are go over Ethernet now. They use their own protocol. They do a lot of calculations per second to maintain the integrity and safety of the cluster. The node can't communicate with the rest of the cluster. It'll voluntarily exit. Because cluster members share storage, all disk writes need to be coordinated. Cluster uses a quorum scheme to control membership and access. Always need one more than half the total nodes to keep running. So in the all cluster configuration parameters are within the sysgen database. So this is just a glimpse of one of the pages. I actually defined a sysdollar output to an output file, and then I showed all the cluster parameters, and then I deassigned it, and then I just typed out the listing file. Now this would be kind of a good thing that I could have used pipe for, except for if I was going to pipe something and I was looking for a specific string, I wouldn't have gotten these headers. I wouldn't have gotten all this. If I was looking for allo class, it just would have given me allo class and maybe this information. So this wasn't. This is another way to redirect without using pipe. But then I did try something after, and I didn't have it on the screen. I did do a pipe of I did a pipe of MC sysgen show /plus. And then I piped it, and I did a type of sysdollar pipe because that logical is a memory structure that carried all of that information that I would be searching from anyway. And I dumped it out and gave me the same information. So if you're fluent with pipe, you understood what I just said. Okay, so here's a picture of a cluster, 4 nodes. The blue is the network. Usually systems will have a separate NIC for I shouldn't say usually. A lot of times they'll have a separate NIC for cluster traffic just so they don't have any issues with it. So the red one's SCA traffic. So it's system communication architecture. And then the fiber channel down here. This just to get a glimpse of what's going on. Okay, so now Vixen is down. Now the quorum equation is the number of expected votes plus 2 divided by 2. So we have expected votes of 4 here, plus 2 is 6, and divided by 2 is 3. So we should be able to stay up. But now Dancer's not dancing anymore, so now we have a problem, and we don't have 3 nodes. We have 2 nodes. What's going to happen is this node's going to hang until we get enough votes back, or until someone going and manually changes the quorum, which is kind of tricky. So this is what it looks like from DCL. You do show cluster /continuous, and there'll be a prompt on the bottom. You can type add votes and add cluster, how I got here. So all of my cluster stuff is here. Cluster expected votes, quorum, votes, things like that. This is what I have up here. In this cluster, I already had 2 nodes down. But to recalculate quorum here is 8 plus 2 divided by 2 is 10 divided by 2, or 5. So I have some breathing space here, but this is just, if you do a show cluster, this is the kind of information you expect to see. Cluster, okay. So the other answer, this is how files are set up. And we're talking, because a lot of times you wonder, is like, how do you boot 2 nodes into a single device? How do things not get confused? And so basically, the master file directory, and this is just an example out of one of our manuals. So you have a node called Jupiter, a node called Saturn. And so Jupiter will be sys0's root, and Saturn will be sys1. I'll get to roots in a minute. And then so they'll fall down to here, and then they'll also look in VMS $common. So it's kind of it's a cascade or a search list. This is looking at it a little differently. So if from sys$system, we have sys$sysroot, which is sysxe, which points to sys$specific. a lot of times this is just our explanation, but a lot of times you would just look into the dollar system, but this is what's going on under the hood. And if it doesn't find it in the root, it will find it, and then it'll go look in the common area. So but it won't go to either of these, and this is kind of misleading. If I'm looking for something for Jupiter, it'll just go to Jupiter's root. It won't go look in Saturn's root. Sysman, another handy way to look and change things on other nodes. If using that MCR command, run sysman from sysdollar system, and we're going to set our environment / cluster. I could do a set environment / node equals IA21 if I wanted, but right now I'm going to do a / cluster. It'll tell me. I can also specify a user if I want to change username, but I'll have to put put the credentials in. But I'm doing this under mine. So all commands in sysman that you're going to do something, you have to specify a do. So if I did a show time, it'll come back and say invalid symbol, invalid command. So I have to put a do in front of it. I do show time, blah, 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 blah. Everybody reports back, took those out. So, but sysman does all kinds of other stuff. You can go and modify, if you're here and I say I want to modify some parameters, I can see sys parameters to see what I can change. I can start up, I can shut down, I can do disk quota stuff. If I have new devices that were presented in my system, I would do an IO. I think that's on the next page. I could do an IO autoconfig /log, and it'll go out and look for my WIDs and it'll populate that. So this does a lot of this. This is again not necessarily day one stuff, but this is a very handy tool to look at to see what's going on across your systems. All right, aliases. So we talked about that file name before. So if I do show logical sysdollar system, it points to sysdollar sysroot. Sysdollar sysroot points to DK10. This is SCSI drive. Sys0 is the root for this system. And then it also falls down and points to common, which is sys0, that's syscommon. This doesn't actually exist. If we look down here, we look at a directory of a file called VMS $common, we see it's 1210. If we look at a directory in sys0 called syscommon.dir, it's also 1210. So these files with different names are actually pointing to the same place, and they still fall when you're looking at sysdollar sysroot. It's going to look in the root, and then it's going to look in the common, but this common is common to everybody in the cluster. Every root's going to have that definition. Helper tools. All right. Availability manager. If you have this, it's an awesome tool. I've saved my bacon a couple different times. This will give you, this runs on Windows, but it interfaces, it has an agent that runs on VMS, and it will, you can look at, anything about, this is, let's see, you can see all the processes are here, and you can specify the thresholds of when things turn red. You can have multiple nodes and multiple clusters. This is kind of like the show system earlier. I got what's going on with these things. Oops, more than that. I can also click on one of these processes and then seem to be missing some slides. Some of these processes and drill down and see exactly what they're doing. I can kill the process from there. I can reconfigure the cluster from in here. This is really, really good. There was a time when I had a system that it ran out of process slots, so no one could log in, which means nobody could log in. All of our users were in menus, so they didn't have access to DCL. Because it had this here, I was able to go in and I didn't have to log in, but I could go in and fix the problem. It's like I had to kill a couple idle processes, or if you got, your system's locked up and you got something that's looping and you can't get to it, can't kill it. You can, there's things you can do there. You can shut down systems. So it's a good backdoor to have if you already have it. It's a licensed product. If you don't have it, you just go to send an email to sales@vms.software. VMS SPI. This is a good extra set of eyes to watch your system. If you have, say you run out of disk space or a process that process died and it needs to get restarted, you could actually do the restart from within here. And so this has interfaces that will dump things out to Slack and Splunk and Datadog and PagerDuty and all those whatever syslog aggregator you might have. This one was for Slack. But so this is something, and I did a presentation on this product last year at Bootcamp. Something you use when we talked about how we wanted to limit the amount of stuff that goes to the audit log. Everything that goes to the audit log can get sent over this, which mean, and what happened is we ended up swamping the network with so many events that were happening at the same time. Anyway, yeah, it does a lot of things. It'll also send you an email telling you what's wrong. And if it corrected it, you can have it configure it to notify you that the problem's fixed. Again, this is another licensed one, but when you it comes with the free 90-day trial period, so it's kind of handy if you have any questions about that on the product support for this one. Again, sales@vmssoftware.com for more information. This web UI, I honestly don't have a lot of information on this. There's a YouTube link up there. This is it's a Windows based. It's supposed to be a single pane of glass kind of system where you can modify, you can change user parameters and passwords and change printers, and you can do different TCP/IP things. So that yeah, that's worth checking out there. VM, we talked about T4 earlier, and actually it was when we talked about the monitor utility. The monitor utility, you can do a /record. So T4 basically uses a lot of monitor stuff, and it'll do a /record for the entire day. And so all of that data gets sent out and saved and bundled up into a zip file, and you can move it over to Windows and use this tool, which is the timeline visualizer. And I just selected basically just this system had 16 CPUs. I just selected the busy one. This is what shows. So you can cross match and cross reference different parameters and functions to see where what's going on in your system. This is I think this is still free. I don't think this is licensed. It's pretty handy, but it's good for trending stuff and to see what your system's been doing. For real-time stuff, it isn't until this Bootcamp. Brett Cameron did a thing the other day, and he has a way to do T4 with like a 5-second delay out to a Grafana-based web browser. So yeah, when that gets published, if you're interested in that. Resources again. Also, the TPU editor. There's a manual TPU users guide. We talked, earlier. I had a list of different places you could get help from, but this is more specific with some of the things we've talked about: clusters, ODS5, DCL command reference is broken into DCL dictionary 8, 2 volumes of that. The security, user access and audit utility, and actually all of the privilege stuff is in the. That's not TPU. That last one's wrong. It's not. It's a guide to OpenVMS security. I'll see if we get that corrected before this gets published. OpenVMS user manual has a lot of your commands. VMS software, we have a GitHub. I'm not sure. I don't have enough information on that to tell you anything about it right now. System management, there is 2 volumes of that, essentials, and then tuning monitoring complex systems. All right, have any questions? Did I make it on time?
Yeah, about 8 minutes. Pretty much, yeah.
All right. Yeah, like I said, the goal was to give you an exposure to a lot of these things. And then we're gonna, when this gets pushed out on our YouTube site, I'll do a lot of shorter, like 5 to 10 minute ones about like here's how to initialize a queue, or here's how to set up an ACL or something like that. Something that's like day 2 or week 2 kind of stuff that that you'll need to know, but there's no way to do it. There's like whole courses of stuff, so I can't do all of it in things. So I can specify some of the things that came out of here, or if I have any questions about specific things, you can.
I know one of the things with us is the